In the heart of FFS, there's a legacy that began 50 years ago, grounded in dedication, resilience, and a commitment to South Africa's industrial future. It all started with a vision to build something meaningful and lasting.
A vision that would change the landscape of South Africa's energy industry. This is more than a company. It's a story built on passion, perseverance, and innovation that drives FFS forward every day.
Our founders, Tony and Deanne Herter, took the first bold steps, establishing FFS in Durban. It was a time of raw ambition and immense challenges, yet the founding team paved the way.
I'm honored and I'm flattered because to me, my husband was always the kingpin of the business. He really was. I mean, he's fantastic. He was fantastic.
From humble beginnings, the story grew. As Peter Froud tells it, these early moments were about bringing people together for a shared purpose.
The start of FFS, when it was originally brought into being, it was called Fuel Firing Systems. And that's when the Arabs kindly put the fuel price up by a factor of 10. We at Union Wedding Company were suddenly faced with astronomical fuel bill and turned to Tony and a few other people for advice as to how we could replace at least 2 of our boilers with a coal-fired boiler. And he went ahead with that. Well, a year later, we hadn't really progressed. And I happened to know the MD of SAPREF. I've been at university with him, Andy Warner, and said, haven't you got some sort of fuel which is cheaper than heavy furnace oil? After discussing it a bit, he said, well, what we do have is our waste fuel dam, which we call Midmol 2, at the back of SAPREF. And he says, look, you're welcome to it. I'd only be too pleased to get it out.
Swindon was like in the middle of nowhere, and there was nothing there really. And so they basically built the entire plant on trailers in Durban at Teakwood Road. So they commissioned it like in Durban to make sure it worked, and then they unhooked everything and then rehooked it up together.
You see, Cecil said that they didn't throw anything away, which is a load of...
Yeah.
Within 6 months, we had adapted, we were able to refine it sufficient for our use. Anyway, so that solved our problem, and away we went.
I was working really hard and I was feeling kind of like, post-exam or whatever. My dad was going to go to the forest because he had this idea to make refined coconut oil. So my dad had an idea to extract the coconut oil, using sort of alcohol extraction or whatever instead. So we take the coconut and we mince it, and we use the fluidized bed dryer to dry it, and then use alcohol extraction to extract the oil. We got really, really great high quality oil. And so that was my vacation project the one summer.
Now, Tony, being a businessman, looked at it and said, well, we were producing over 1,000 tons a month, much more than we needed. So Tony said, look, I've got a couple of customers who are badly in need of cheaper fuel. Can I buy it from you and sell it to them? Certainly, carry on. 74, 75, 76, right up to 77, 78, I was still working for a Union Wedding Company. We built a new factory in Clearwood, and away that went.
The Teakwood office was quite an old building, and the passage had a few floorboards missing, which we would either just walk on either side of it, and really it didn't matter.
Tony came and he offered me a job, so I took it. Spoke to Jen first. And we then started to supply the whole of Unicorn's fleet. That was about 7 ships. 81, Cecil got to hear of us and they offered us this waxy or 20.
When we first started operating out of Teakwood Road, it basically would deliver them fuel every week, but they didn't like to pay. And so every Friday, my mother would go to every single person who owed the company money, and she would knock on the door and say, okay, where's the check, basically. And that was how we kept it.
With visionaries like Dave Sands, who saw the potential for Cape Town's tank farm, FFS expanded beyond what anyone could have ever imagined. Leaders at the time were setting foundations for the future we now build on.
Dave Sands was always one to see an opportunity wherever he went. So I went down there one weekend, or 1 week, and Dave said, you need to go and show me something. He told me, he said, look out there, see the tanks. I said, what tanks? I said, the tanks you're going to build. And we looked at that, and it was so obvious that we have to do something there to be masters of our own destiny. Went back home and had Don Hunter around the table, and we had a long discussion, and he said, there's merit. We've got no business plan, but there's merit. We got a lease, a 20-year lease, and we put up a tank farm for 14,500 cubic meters. And eventually the 3 tanks were standing, 5 tanks, and Don also designed a very specific lightweight roof for those tanks, which was another big cost saver. But it was another unique way of doing things the FFS way.
And then there was the launch of the Black Egret barge, an engineering feat and a proud symbol of our company's drive for progress. With each milestone, we pushed the limits of what FFS could accomplish.
The story of the Black Egret. So this was a bunkering barge that we operated in Durban. It started like this. A bunch of Russian con men flew in on a private jet and set about getting funding for a project which was supposed to be a logging plant in the Congo. Part of that was a series of barges, dumb barges, which were no engines, that were going to float the logs down the Congo River to the sea where they would be loaded onto ships. All of a sudden the Russians disappeared, and Standard Bank were left holding hundreds of millions of rands worth of equipment. And the idea was that the barges would be built in road transportable pieces up to the Congo and then assembled. And Tony said to Peter, I want some of them. And so Peter said, well, it's an auction. So Tony said, well, go and buy some. The next day we got a note to say, hey, you must come and fetch your 35 odd pieces of barge. And we looked at this, and then Tony came to me and said, Don, make a barge out of that. I said, what kind of barge? He said, I want a 1,500 ton carrying capacity. I went back to him, Tony, no man, they're too small. He said, you won't even get 600-700 tons loaded on these things. He said, no man, he said, you must stretch. I said, yeah, but it's only 2 meters deep, but you can't. He said, well, put one on top of the other, then it'll be 4. Okay, I went back and lo and behold, he was right. And so we came up with a 65-meter barge that was 4 meters deep and 10 meters wide, and we built this thing. And we built these things. So I bought 3 Marinized Scania truck engines. So Dave remade them and replaced the other 2, and they ran for 10 years after that. And it launched. And we had the first black captain in the port as our captain. It was the most amazing little, not so little craft. And that was the kind of thing we did.
That's brilliant. Absolutely, I wanted that story. Our re-refined base oil journey stands out foremost in my mind. We developed the technology from lab scale to pilot plant to demo plant and ultimately full-scale production in Pietermaritzburg. We were able to continuously improve the process, so much so that in 2022 we cracked what's called the so-called holy grail of re-refined base oil, where we could make a full stream out of the used lubricating oil, something we don't believe is done anywhere else in the world. Sadly, we were unable to make the plant profitable despite all our best efforts.
Early projects faced challenges, but through out-of-the-box thinking, perseverance, teamwork, and a make-a-plan attitude, many became profitable. This spirit has cemented itself in the DNA of FFS.
And as we look ahead, we know that our journey is just the beginning. Together as a team, we will shape the next chapter of FFS with resilience, passion, and a dedication to excellence.
FFS Refiners, 50 years of innovation, leading today, redefining the future.